Hello, everybody, and welcome to lesson 11 of class, where we're going to talk about theories as far as, well, imagining is war logical. Now, when we're talking about logic and the idea of moving from creativity to logic, we have to, well, just apply logic. Now, logic isn't always black and white, but it does make sense to a lot of people. It's the creativity. That's the part that, well, kind of disrupts things. And then, of course, you have art to connect the pieces, but then, of course, you also have science to explain the artwork, or at least where the pieces come from that create the art. And then, of course, once all that comes together, you ask yourself, is there more out there? And that'll lead you to spirituality as well as science, art, logic, and creativity because you start to do your research correctly. Now, most people are emotional, right? And the reason why I say they're emotional, I mean, think of Einstein's theory of relativity, right? E equals mc squared, right? But to trigger an emotion, you have to trigger energy within the body. Now, if you're triggering energy within the body or your mass, right? And a mass is something that's filled up with something that matters. If you can't see that, go look in a mirror. But you have to trigger the energy inside, the internal thing, right? Now, a lot of people think that the brain is pink, but it's not. If you've ever seen a brain, it doesn't look pink until later because it's been oxidized, if that makes sense, right? So you have to be careful with certain depictions. Like, how do I say this? Some people will be like, oh, yeah, no, I got blue blood, I got this blood, blah, 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 blah. But then why is the blood always red? Think about it. So, why I mentioned that is because we're talking about war, and in war, there's always casualties, right? The thing is, people don't consider the casualties if they don't have anything to lose. So, me being a veteran myself, I've seen what war does to people, right? They get this stare in their face and they develop this sense of aggression inside of them where they don't think anymore. They just need to hear something and they snap. And then all of a sudden, because they didn't understand the context within the content, they want to go ahead and, I don't know, crank something really quick. And you shouldn't do that because if you put too much stress or pressure on something too quickly, like a twig, it could break, right? So think about this. If I were to say, what do you want to do for this Christmas? Would you like a plastic tree or would you like a real tree? Or would you like the tree to stay alive for a long time? Well, if I said I was going on TikTok, would I say I'm going alive on TikTok? No, I would say I'm going live. But then what am I doing right now? Right now I'm talking to you and this is me living. So check it out. If you don't understand why war isn't logical, then you're not understanding the First and Second Amendment. Because normally what happens is that there's normally a form of communication that happens when you're expressing, how do I say this? Expressing your free speech. Now, not everybody gets along, and that's why we have conflict with bricks and everything else. But we got to think about this, right? If you went to the Amazon, you'd be amazed of the things that come out of there. Most of the medicines that are developed come out of the Amazon. That's why it's protected like a rainforest, right? Now, if you think about that, you start asking yourself questions. The reason why you ask yourself questions is because, where did I put my marker? Oh, excuse me. Let me fix this. The reason why you ask these questions is because you need to understand how one communicates amongst a group of people. Once you understand how people communicate, then it'll be easy to redirect, or how do I say this? That song is like, oh, you not like us, blah, blah, blah. But there's a specific part in there and it says, stab this way, stab that way. Now, that's very interesting because, well, there's kids hearing it. So imagine what they'll do if they hear that. And it's like, oh, I'm going to stab this way. Boom. Don't do it that way. How about step this way? Now step that way. This is how you avoid danger, right? If somebody's coming at you this way, I'm going to step away. If somebody's coming at you at another angle, I'm going to step away, right? If you're walking on a sidewalk, I'm going to say, move out the way because I'm trying to protect you from the danger I already see coming. Now, when I talk about this, it's very interesting because most people are quick to jump into conflict without weighing the cost of those things. See, if you don't have anything to sacrifice, if you don't have anything that holds your heart that can be taken away, well, then what is it that matters in this world to you? Because if you are a heartless SOB, right, then how can you really be a boss? right? If you have nothing to care for in the world, then you have nothing to lose, so you're willing to do stupid stuff. Now, yeah, if once you have certain priorities and things in order, you could do crazy things. I've done my fair share of them, trust me. But I heard something once and I was just like, I got really hot on the phone. And long story short, it's not important, but I got really hot on the phone. People didn't understand. I was like, don't you know the job that you have? Don't you know the responsibility that you have? I said, right now, I'm young, single, and want to have fun, and I'm ready to mingle. But the thing is, if you have children, if you have somebody else in your life, a partner, a wife, you have to understand these things that you're risking your life. They may never see you again. So don't be so foolish to jump in and rush into battle only to die. Remember, Achilles was tricked by Odysseus to go to battle after his mother said, don't go, for you will surely die, but your name will forever be remembered. Huh, that's an interesting thing. You know who died and went to war? Jesus Christ did, didn't he? Yeah, but his name was always remembered, along with the thief and somebody else. What is it? The thief, the murderer, and whoever was in the middle. Oh, no, right? How many? I'm getting it confused with Romans or Gladiator if you've seen the movie. But they used to have they used to put the crucifixes down the aisle, so on and so forth, and that became spikes just to get the point across. Now, if you're not thinking that way, and you were never shown the consequences of messing with somebody else's territory, ask yourself this question. Why is it called a peace pipe, but you pay for tobacco? Why is it illegal and they give that to you when you have cancer, but they don't give you tobacco cigarettes, which does trigger it? Doesn't make sense, nor is it logical, right? They're reaching out for something, right? Because it comes from nature, but one's dried out, has nicotine, gets you addicted, so on and so forth. The other one barely is addicting. However, it does help the body recover. Now, how does it do that? One, most people don't know how to rest. Now, in the military, this is a double meaning, but resting means having peace in your life. Are you happy? Are you not content or complacent, but are you somewhat not grateful but satisfied with the things that you actually asked for, that you got and received, but for some reason people are never happy? Now, the thing is that when you ask for something, and I remember this hearing it from somebody, I gave this person a compliment, and this was after her daughter said something to me, and I was like, don't say anything. But I gave her a compliment, and then she started acting different around me. And then I go into a thinking mode. Every time I hear or feel a disconnect, my brain starts working. And I needed to go to sleep because I traveled a lot, so on and so forth, to get to this birthday party. Now baby shower, which is where I'm going to now, but not mine, someone else's. However, excuse me, the one thing I kept saying was, I'm trying to compliment you. I'm trying to let you know I think that looks good on you. But she didn't get it. And instead, because I had a six pack, but I even drank the whole thing, she screamed in front of the little girl. It was like, he's an alcoholic. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not. But you're crazy sometimes. And I'm trying to understand you. So it's okay. I'm still going to try to work with you. But I still care about you. You're just a little crazy for me. And she's like, this is not going to work, so on and so forth, etc. Okay, no problem. The reason why we broke up the first time was because I didn't want to get in trouble. Just saying. Now, this was during my time of the military, and the reason why I brought this story up is because some other friends of mine are still in the military, some are out, some are contractors, etc. If there is a conflict like war, you have to think not only tactically, but strategically. The reason why I say you should think tactically and strategically, right? Let me grab a napkin real quick. Where is, okay, we're gonna do this. Sorry about that. Had to put some water on here. Now, what is your perspective of the thing that I'm using to wipe down the board? Does it look like erasers clapping together? Does it look like a paper towel, a handkerchief? If I hold it one way, it looks like a diamond, kind of, sort of. right? If I hold it the other way, it could be a square. What if I what if I hold it flat, just enough? Kind of looks like a straight line if I was holding a marker or a Sharpie, right? And so something like this, right? So you would do something like this, you would show it, you would go boom, and then it's gone, and then it comes back. Was that logical? No. It was logic mixed with creativity, but you could put the pieces together if you move quick enough, or you know something already. Now, when it comes to logic in war, the consequences of the things that you might leave behind. And this goes out to a friend of mine, Ueda, no longer with us. He ended up passing away, but miss you too, boss. Miss you too. All right, so Ueda. Check this out. If we have a scale, right? So you would have a scale with a plate, so on and so forth, here, blah, blah, blah. And then you would put some stuff on it, so on and so forth. Now there's 3 over here, but there's a lot more over here. Do you think this is balanced even though that looks leveled? Is it even straight? See, this is where it comes down to perception, perspective, and how the algorithm works, right? Because if you don't know how to escape the matrix, then how you are going to know that you're even in it? Now, when we're talking about this, the scales, the weight, the balance, the force, right? This is physics, right? Science, spirituality, whatever you want to call, whatever it is, right? Whatever you say is God or the universe or the creator or whatever. Do you think that they would be willing to help you out if you were just going to murder or kill something that was created? Think about it. The cells in your body work together in a certain particular way. Now, when you have a lot of, as they say, free radicals, I think that's the correct terminology because that's what I saw when I researched it. Now, that was through my phone and my computer. I would have to get some more medical books, but what's it called? Free radicals, right? These are the cells that are lazy, that don't want to do anything. And then the other cells that are already working together, they'll go ahead and they'll excommunicate, or the other ones will go ahead and feel threatened in the body. And so they clump up together and they'll create a tumor. Now, this can happen in a variety of ways. One, stress, right? Or if you have PTSD, that's another way, right? Because that's post-traumatic stress syndrome, something like that, etc. And so when you're dealing with these are the things that come along with war. What are you going to be? What? You think it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows when you go to war? It's not. Now, if I was an enemy, you would want to see what I was doing. But if I was helping, right, and I was thinking strategically and tactically, right? So if you were driving down the street and you wanted to balance this out, right? Because this one looks a little heavier, but this doesn't look straight at all. I would just plop a couple other things here, and now the scales can be balanced. The thing is, someone is always trying to get, as they say, the upper hand. Hence the scales, why they would balance like this, right? So if I was driving on the street, I want to use strategy and tactics, right? If I'm going to war, there's always going to be a battle somewhere. So if I'm going to war, you need strategy and tactics. Now, when it comes to strategy and tactics, strategy is long-term. Tactics are short maneuvers that you can take. Think about this. You have rally racing, and then you have NASCAR. One's more tactical and agile. The other one is more endurance-based. Now, when you combine those things, you have Formula One racing. Now, Formula One racing is a little bit more aggressive, but a hell of a lot more fun to watch. And the reason why I say this is because if an enemy were to attack us, well, it would be smart to, as they say, fight the battle internally as you study your opponent. In order to know thy enemy, you must know yourself in 1,000 ways. Now, why would I say that? The reason I would say that is because when it comes to tactics, right? If I know that my enemy is even hostile to their own people, like, how do I say this? The cells in a body that don't want to work, the free radicals that clump up together and make a cancer, etc. And then that's how you formulate broken bridges and the tumor and all that, because it's feeding off another source within your body. Now, tactics. If We already know that you guys are going to go ahead and mess with yourself internally. We just got to have, well, I think Vietnam had this propaganda, right? Props, and then propaganda. So, what is propaganda? It's psychological warfare, right? But then from there, we have to do other tactics. You know, how do you conquer? It says to divide and conquer, right? Right now we have the campaigns going on and everybody's dividing into two sides, right? So we have division, right? Divvy, right? Division, that's short hand. Some people would say WordPress, but that's actually division. So in tactics, we have, well, what was this again? If you remember, type it down low. Propaganda, then we have division. When we move forward in other tactics, we can then conspire, right? Or inspire in reverse, if that makes sense, right? Conspire. Now, what is this? Some people say, oh, conspiracy, so on and so forth. Well, if the enemy could really destroy you from within, then you have to know what's without. What do I mean by that? Well, if everything I know makes you happy, if I want to upset you, I'll just take it away. And then I'll just keep taking stuff away, make stuff harder, keep taking stuff away, make stuff harder, just to see when you will break. And then once you have a sample group, you can then spread that out to everything else, right? Think about this. Where's this? God, I love it. Check this out. So if you were to go to like a petri dish and I were to drop a little bit of coffee onto a petri dish or a little disc, right? Or a slide, and then look at it underneath a microscope, it would look one way. If I were to then take rubbing alcohol and add a couple drops, you will start seeing that certain things will start to die and fall off because things are living within everything, right? Or moving. It's like a sense of vibration, right? And what do I mean by that? The vocal cords, right? Think Little Mermaid in your voice, right? That's exactly how you project your pitch, etc., so on and so forth, tonality, volume, etc. You can tell by someone's tonality, pitch, or how they're speaking if they're, how do I say this? If they're not feeling well, if they got the flu, if they, are happy, sad, so on and so forth. Normally, people will show themselves to you honestly and truly if you decide to not judge them first. And that's the problem with everybody. They may have what's known in the court world as hearsay. Somebody may say something to you, they may show you something, and then you form your own opinions, and then they put that person in front of you, and now you're just pissed off with them, and you don't even know why. So that's called propaganda, right? And division. Now, what happens is you understand this to conspire, which is inspire in reverse, right? This is when you're turning people against each other. But then somebody who is in charge of propaganda will say that you're spitting out a conspiracy. Now, what's a conspiracy? Well, it's factual, fictional, whatever, right? That's why you should fact check, right? This is thankfully we have AI now, and you can fact check a lot of things. When it comes to strategy, you would deploy this internally. It's easier to fight less people when there's less people. And I don't have to waste my resources. I'll let you guys decide. I mean, you remember what happened January 6th, right? They went to the Capitol, they rioted, so on and so forth, etc. Everybody got all scared and everything. But why? Because certain people got fed up with certain things, right? Let's talk about freedom of speech for a second. How about that? So, First Amendment, right? I think that's correct. Is your right to speak freely how you want to speak. Now, if you get penalized for that, right? Not the penile gland, but if you get penalized for that, right? Because somebody doesn't like the words coming out of your mouth that they can hear and see when you're moving it, right? So when you're doing that, what exactly are you doing? You're communicating. But if the other person already comes with pre-intentions, right, or cruel intentions, as they say, they will go ahead and manipulate and deceive. Now, on the other hand, if you know how to use your voice correctly, there was a movie, what was it, Hitch or something like that? Hitch, Twitch, Switch, something like that. And there was a part, it's like, oh, boppy, blah, 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 or, ooh, mommy. He goes, that means this, right? He goes, yeah, say that again. It was this weird thing, right? But check this out. In strategic decision making, you have to think long term, right? So how do we mitigate risk, right? Because we want to have as few sacrifices as possible, right? Especially because they've already attacked internally. So think about this: if there was a civil war, right? Red versus blue, there'll be a lot of purple everywhere. Let's just say that, right? Because people will see something, they'll create a division or a split between the two parties. Then they will conspire to put the two parties, against each other. And after January 6th, I can only imagine what's going to happen after people vote, so on and so forth, to actually take action of who they believe in. Now, what does this mean? Well, that's going to happen in November after the voting happens. But we have to plan further, right? So how do you look 6 to maybe 12, 36, or even 48 months out, right? Because it might be a long time thing. Well, this is a long time thing, right? Getting people to see something over and over again and then to create that division, to, as they say, plant the seed, will lead people to formulate their own positions, ideas, and authorities on people because they're feeling a certain way about you, right? But they don't understand certain things, right? So because of that, you have to not only look long term, but you also have to employ short tactics along the way in the decision making process, as far as what you're going to do 6 to 12 months, and then 24 months, 36, 80, 48, 84, so on and so forth, etc. I would probably say maybe 60, right? So you have 6 months out, 12 months out, and then what's happening 60 months out? Why would I say all this? Well, so why would I say that time frame? Well, how long has Ukraine been in conflict? If people knew exactly what they were doing, it would end quickly. Trust me, I've seen it happen. So when it comes to strategic warfare, right? Think StarCraft for a second, right? You want to have everything going correct, but if the other person gets a head start first, how do you go ahead and win? Well, then I have to backtrack. And if you remember the other lessons from creativity, you can rewind, then move forward to understand how this would all come together, right? Because we would do a form of, well, fear setting, and then from there, instigate, retaliate, and then that yo-yo happens back and forth. And then there's this whole chaos that happens, right? That gets driven and driven and driven. Now, when you're trying to prevent these things from happening, you have to understand your enemy. And if you understand how to upset your enemy, you know how to throw them off in a conversation, right? Because they're going to get emotionally triggered because of the energy, right? The energy that resides within the mass and the matter inside, because you're a body. So I guess you matter, right? And then, of course, if you can't see that, you go look in a mirror so you can see yourself a little bit better. Now, when you're talking about war and conflict and you're weighing all these things out as far as options, you have to think not only creatively, logically, artistically, but you also have to think scientifically, right? How does science actually prove things? Well, they have a hypothesis, they test, and then if the test comes out and they can replicate it, control it, so on and so forth, then they say, okay, it's safe. But if it's art, it's more complicated, right? Because art can always adapt. It can change, right? And what do I mean by this? Pablo Picasso developed Cubism, right? But then you have, was it Pollock that ended up with the splatter paintings, so on and so forth, etc. Those are two abstract different things, right? If I were to separate them. Now we have one side versus the other, the right side or the left side, right? And if I add two E's in the middle, it'll be a reel. But if you step too close, you might hit an eel. Now, what is an eel? Think Little Mermaid, they were electrical. And that's what I'm talking about, right? Because if you know how to trigger somebody emotionally, meaning you get them to dispense energy, right? Because there's tremors in the body, because people can't lie all the time. It's really hard to keep that up. But if they also tell the truth, how do you decipher the two, right? There was a TV show called How to Get Away with Murder, and there was another one called Lie to Me, right? And Lie to Me, this show was like, who was it? It was based on Paul Ackman, but Lightman Group. There we go. And I remember this one part. They were at the airport and they were going through security, etc., so on and so forth. And this girl that was doing security was like, you right there, stop, blah, 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 blah. He's like, what? She goes, let me see your briefcase, this, that, and the third. I need to see it right now. Strip down, blah, blah, blah. He does so. And then his partner comes in and goes, oh, you're a natural. She's like, what does that mean? And it was based upon not only just the micro expressions, but reading everything and then making quick, rapid mathematical assumptions based upon known and fictional human behavior, based upon a lot of studying and research, experience, and being out in the real world, getting a lot of at-bats, if that makes sense. So if you're trying to make money or you want to make money, because nobody really understands the term human capital until war breaks out and then you have no employees. So before the leaders make a decision, understand what you're doing, right? And this is addressing specific leaders, right, that are going to get put into positions of power, and realize this. Would you send your child to war? Would you? If they were biologically blood, they pushed you pushed them out, etc., would you send them to war? Probably not. If you were put in a position that you just slid into because you don't think you would be accepted, well then, how does that position you in the eyes of the beholder? Now, you have to think clearly because you have to calculate risk. How do we mitigate risk during the time frame? Right? This is where this already kicked off. And if you don't know what's happening here, right, then you don't know exactly what's going to happen here. Unless you can see the future, you're not going to know what's happening here. So you have to plan, right? You have to assess. You have to think critically. And the reason why I say this strategically is because, yeah, you could be a party animal, but then once you have a child, that party goes away a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, after you have the baby, so on and so forth, it's like, oh, that first glass of rum, whiskey, etc., wine, whatever, beer, Corona. And so it's one of those things like, well, okay, so 9 months from now, on my 11th month, I could have a beer or whatever you want, because I'm going to do this with you, right? But I'm going to help you out along the way. But in order to be successful, right, you can't have BS, right? I wrote ST, but you can't have BS, right? So you got to get rid of the props and being fake. You have to not have division, or you have to get rid of it, right? So on and so forth, in order to work together. And then you have to not conspire, but inspire one another to keep pushing forward, to keep moving forward. Why? Because it's a long-term process, right? If we go to war and there's a civil war internally, that's only going to weaken us internally from an external combative force. Most people don't even understand the one job that they have, yet alone the two. So when we're talking about this, we have to not only flip the script, but work together, because without unity, how can you actually see what's going on? Because without unity, you're a fragmented, broken system. You got broken into, right? So if you catch a virus on your computer, or your computer gets hacked, then there's a flaw or a glitch. And if that happens, glitch, I thought I said Twitch, sorry. Twitch is excuse me. If you don't remember Twitch, I think he was in a couple Step Up movies, etc. He ended up passing away, let's just say that. And I had a genius try to say something after I heard about it. And I used to be a part of the community. And I got a little upset because he knew exactly what he was doing. And somebody came in to thankfully help him out, because I might have said something or done something when they were getting a little fresh. So if you're thinking strategically, long term, you have to understand this. There's a song out there, because you have to understand, right? Listen to this. Kendrick Lamar has this song, They're Not Like Us. But in a part in that song, there's a part that goes, stab this way, stab that way. But it should be step this way, step that way. How is Kendrick Lamar, a freaking leader, instigating people killing one another? Excuse my language. I see that's my tone, pitch, frequency, and the fact that I'm a former Marine, not moron or maroon, Marine. Uncle Sam's misguided children, let's just say that. And so from there, you want to understand something. Well, if you don't know what you're doing and your mindset is just to be hostile to everybody, what's that going to do to not only the people you surround yourself with, that you choose to surround yourself with, the the a-holes or the whatever around you that keep saying stuff to disrupt you, right? Because there's something called disruptors in business. While, people break into a new market or try to take over a territory to get market share, right? This could be learned in another video, but right now we're going to stick to this because we have to talk about the logic that goes into what? War. Who profits from it? Are the politicians going to war? Because I remember in history, real leaders, if you see my video, why the medicine man is always crazier than the chief and why the chief don't run, is because of the sacrifices that the medicine man makes for the greater good of everybody else, right? The ones in the tribe, the crew, wherever, right? But that can only work with unity. And if that doesn't work with unity because you're divided, right? How are you going to hold off someone for 6 months, 12 months, 60 months? If somebody comes in, they spend what, 48 months in service, minus a year to catch up on everything that's been going on, so they get 3 years, 36 months? That's a warranty for a car. Think about that. How fast does your warranty go, right? Think about it. So, if you don't have the defense system for this, then in this time frame, this is roughly, I think, 5 years, there'll be a new person put in place. And if we have something like a social unrest like January 6th, especially after the presidency, who's going to stop it? Who's going to stop it? If they're going there to support somebody or they're going there to do something else like they did January 6th. And then, of course, you have to understand, well, how, right? How are they going to make their decisions on who they send to do this? Because there was a thing and it's like, oh, you're an American, eh? What kind of American are you? I don't know if you ever seen that trailer, but that's what Civil War is going to be like. Oh, I'm from here. Yeah, but what kind are you? This is where kindness matters, right? Because with kindness, there's care, but there's also support and some boundaries that are really there. For instance, when I raised my voice, right? I was setting a boundary, right? There's a line that shouldn't be crossed. That's the thing people don't understand, you know? Like a dog chasing its tail. Doesn't know where it's going, round and round in a circle. You could point a laser on the floor, it'll follow it. But because you have that power, it comes with great responsibility. I'm freaking quoting Spider-Man, for crying out loud. But if you don't understand this, Kendrick Lamar, you're instigating trouble to happen. As you collect dollars and cents, because killing doesn't make sense nor make you dollars, right? Remember, how hungry were you when you first started? All right? So instead of if you're trying to be a leader, don't say stab. Guide them to avoid danger. Why don't you say step this way, step that way, or back up? Or as they used to say, back up, or whoop, whoop, that's the sound of the police, whoop, whoop. You know what I'm saying? Now, let's get back into it. So if we're going to be talking about this, because that takes a grooming process. If you hear something over and over again, you're going to get groomed, conditioned, so on and so forth, and then eventually they could go ahead and just trigger something because you already, or I should say, they already planted a seed because they weren't trying to inspire you. They were trying to conspire in order to get you to take action in something, right? Because what happens in a nightclub? Boom, you bump into somebody. That song goes off. All of a sudden, in a mental state, people say, it's time to get hostile. Why? Because the song mentions being hostile. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, look at what DMX did. May he rest in peace, right? Look at what Young Hove did, right? The younger version. I don't know about him now. But, I mean, the only worthless person I could tell you right now is P. Diddy, and that's because he might be a piece of shit. Excuse my language. Who goes to all that trouble to get in trouble? Think about it. To what? Feel what? Proud? To feel a sense of pride inside that they have control and power? I mean, look at Kanye West. What happened to him? Or Yeezy, whatever his name going now, right? And this is why in planning long term, you have to be very specific, because if you're not, there's going to be casualties, right? And those casualties are because you did not have proper tactics. You had old school methods that literally explained everything in the beginning. And then you have traditional upcoming of new individuals that do not know how to think outside the box. If you understand what I'm saying, you have to work together to say, keep moving forward. But if you don't care, then you're just going to be left in the dust, as they say. And that's the thing. People don't think that way, right? Because you've never been in that situation, really. You've been playing in the street with your friends. I've seen stuff get blown up. Trust me, I've seen stuff get blown up. I used to be an ammo tech, and I handled a lot of ammunition, let's just say that. So I got very comfortable, and they found a lot of uses for me, right? So check this out. There's a certain cadence to a buildup of conflict. I've seen it over and over again. I've seen it happen over and over again. If you're a veteran, you know somebody that's in the military, etc., have them think or share this video with them, by all means, please, and get them to think about that line, right? Because when I raised my voice to set some boundaries in place, I was speaking to my brothers and sisters in the Marine Corps and others in arms, right? Reason why is because I don't want to see their kids die. I don't want to see them come home with problems. I don't want to see them say something or do something to themselves that I'm tired of seeing. That's why. So here's the thing, leaders, if you're a real one, get your head out of your ass, okay? Because there's a hole there for it. And think clearly. Because if something civil happens and you think you're safe, you're not. A friend of mine named Sid said this to somebody who got way too fresh with their mouth. He said, everybody could be found, especially if they're lost. So leaders, tell whoever you're speaking to fix themselves. Because, well, their children's lives are going to be on the line. And what do I mean by that? If there's a civil war, can you protect them all the time? That's one. If you're not home, could you still protect them? Could the person at home protect them if there's something happening stateside, civil war, and then war happens externally? That's called a division within a conflict. So resources are going to get scattered so far out, you're not going to have enough to survive. Think about that. I do every day. People have a thing with words and they think they're slick, right? I was raised as the black sheep in my family. I got in trouble for everything when I was only trying to do something right. Yes, I've done bad things, but I had a job, right? I've done stupid things. I had a life. The thing is, first we try and then we trust. If you ever remember that expression, right? It's from a movie, right? You could call me Polly if you want to. But first we try, then we trust. What does that mean to you? To me, it means, well, I'm going to see if you could take care of another life, dating, relationships, etc. We're trying it out. And then by miracle, you have a child or two or three, depending on your gift. And we're going to trust you now to take care of another life, even if there's division. You get divorced, can somebody take care of the children? Can you? Because if you can't, there's a problem. Very much so. If you use them to defend yourself, you're just as good as Kendrick Lamar, telling people to stab people. Is it aggressive language? Yes, there's nothing wrong with aggressive language. DMX and others and 50 Cent all have aggressive language. Now, here's the thing. It's how that language is presented, right? Because Kendrick Lamar's chorus sounds like the electric slide. Slide to the left, slide to the right, or stab this way, stab that way. See, a leader knows the consequences and the effects of conflict and how they lead to not just battles, but war, internally and externally, because you're going to go through stuff other things are going to be happening. You have to take care of somebody else. You have to make sure your supplies are there. You have to make sure your weapon is good. You have to make sure all these things are happening, and then you forget about yourself. So one of the things you have to ask yourself is it really worth it? Is the First Amendment worth it? Because the bare necessities happen next. It's the right to bear arms. So if you don't know how to communicate, what happens next? Oh, I'm going to do this to you, right? The nightclub experience. Or it could be out in the street. Maybe you're in your car, you get out, somebody says something to you, and you want to just smack them in the mouth. So when somebody says something, don't listen to respond. Listen to understand, then respond. Take a minute to pause to understand what it is that they're saying. Because if you're only working with your general knowledge, then you don't understand the complexity of communication. Right? I met a gentleman and he was telling me about the draft and everything like that. I said, that's interesting because COVID was kind of like a draft. You got a cold, right? War is a lot more advanced now. Think about that. It doesn't just affect one or two or a group of people, it affects everybody. And that comes with greed, power, control, and those who think that respect comes with all that. You get respect first, then that follows. But if people can't trust you, if you're not actually loyal, how can you spell loyalty without a Y? Because you don't have one. So find your why first, choose wisely, and then from there decide. But always remember the power of communication, your knowledge, and what's inside here. Yes, you may not care about yourself, but someone always has a piece of this, if you know what I'm saying. So remember that before you send somebody off to die, or try to accuse them, or do something dumb. With all these lists and threats and how you're going to ruin other people's career. That's using leverage to only benefit yourself. I'm not an MD, but that's manipulation and deceit and corruption. Because they're saying going to do this. Oh, yeah, well, I'm going to do this and call up some favors and blah, blah, blah. I'm the type of person I'm like, okay, keep going. Keep going. Okay, please stop. Keep going. Please stop. Keep going. Please stop. And I'll do it over and over again. I'm kind of patient. I may scream in my car, but here's the thing. If I'm in a conflict with somebody, I remember there was this one time I was in the bathroom and this gentleman had, I think his name was Alfragio or something like that at the time. He had beef with two of my friends. One was a Golden Gloves champion, the other one was a UFC fighter. And so one of those things is when I was training Jonathan how to fight, I had to teach him certain things. However, he was good with, how do I say this? He was a dynamic fighter, whereas the Golden Gloves boxer was a boxer. So, for instance, they couldn't challenge somebody who did Muay Thai, right? Because if you chop the tree down, how are you going to use the arms to walk around? Ask Lieutenant Dan, right? That's a Forrest Gump thing. So, check this out. If you don't understand how to work together, and the complexities, not only in life, but in conflict, war, internally, externally, and then everything in between. Understand this. If you can't read a Boy Scout symbol and read in between the lines, I'll help you. Because I'm not looking to see that happen again. And what it does to people I know that are friends of mine. When they have a blank stare on their face, they're scared to tell people stuff. They have nightmares, wake up with cold sweats and everything else under the sun. And I can tell you one thing right now. Keep going, and another January 6th might happen. November's right around the corner. And you guys can't even remember that straight. So who is it that you're speaking to? Who do you want to lead you? Who do you want? Whose face do you want up on that screen? That's going to speak for you in a manner of which that will not only protect but defend you. Now, why would I say that? Because some people pretend to be loyal. Some people are. And they forever will be. because trust is developed over time, but it's developed because you got to try, then there's trust. Remember that before someone makes a bad decision or choice based upon the assumptions of others. Remember, you should never assume, because if you don't, well, then who cares? Do you think the healthcare industry cares about you if you have insurance? Probably not as much. I was duly covered. They managed to keep me a long time. The moment I lost my insurance, I was almost kicked out. Interesting, right? Funny how money rules the world. But if you follow the money, you can find the people. Think about it. You can't always bank it. Somebody has to manage it, but it comes from somewhere. And the question you have to ask is, why is it coming from there? That might help you out with accounting. It also might help you out with, well, what's happening in the world, right? Where is it coming from? Look at more than one source. And they say this in the investment community. You want to have a diverse portfolio, as they say, or all-weather portfolio, because if you can't pay attention to that, you'll never see the patterns that are right in front of you. So this has been lesson 11, going into logic, strategy, tactics, and answering the question, is war logical? Now, hope this helped. Take care. I'll see you in lesson 12. Anyways, this has been a blessing. I hope you guys, leave a bunch of comments. I'm hoping that you do, if there's any impact, because that's what really matters. Change this to change this, and then everything else will follow. Have a great day, everybody. Mike City out.